Hello viewers. Welcome to Seek Wisdom. Presenting you the summary of the book, Everything is Fucked, written by Manson. This book challenges us to be more honest with ourselves and connected with the world in ways we probably haven't considered before. We tried to cover the essence of whole book without affecting the quality, so the duration of the video is a bit larger. Do watch till the end. Let's get started. This book is in two parts. First part is about hope. We are a culture not in need of peace or prosperity, but in need of hope. We care for each small thing and need to feel the sense of importance in order to avoid the uncomfortable truth. And then project that imagined sense of importance onto the world around us because it gives us hope. Our psyche needs hope to survive the way a fish needs water. In situations of hopelessness, we will spiritually die. Hopelessness is the root of anxiety, mental illness, and depression. The avoidance of hopelessness then becomes our mind's primary project. Our psyches construct little hope narratives whenever they face adversity which give our lives a sense of purpose. When people prattle on about needing to find their life's purpose, what they really mean is that it's no longer clear to them what to hope for. This is why a lot of people flock to religion, because religions acknowledge this permanent state of unknowing and demand faith in the face of it. But your hope narratives don't need to be religious. They can be anything like raising kids well, saving the environment. We live in an interesting time, when things are arguably better than they have ever been before, yet an irrational sense of hopelessness is spreading across the world. It's a paradox of progress, which means, the better things get, the more anxious and desperate we all seem to feel. Because hope doesn't care about the problems that have already been solved. Hope cares only about the problems that still need to be solved. To build and maintain hope, we need three things: a sense of control, a belief in the value of something, and a community. Control means we feel as though we're in control of our own life. Values means we find something important enough to work toward, something better. And community means we are part of a group that values the same things we do and is working toward achieving those things. Lose any of the three, and you lose hope. Let's start with control. We've all had the experience of knowing what we should do yet failing to do it. We assume it's because we can't control our emotions. We have an assumption from long past that our emotions cause all our problems. This assumption says that if a person is undisciplined or unruly, it's because he lacks the ability to subjugate his feelings. As a result, we judge people based on that assumption, like obesity is seen as a failure of self-control. Also, due to this assumption, in case of any failure to exhibit self-control makes us think something faulty or damaged within us, and we develop need to change who we are. The truth is that the human mind is far more complex and we can't simply change ourselves. However, scientific studies reveal that our emotions are instrumental in our decision-making and our actions. We have two brains, thinking brain and feeling brain. The thinking brain represents conscious thoughts, ability to make calculations, and to reason. It is accurate and impartial. While feeling brain represents emotions, impulses, intuition, and instincts, and is often inaccurate, irrational and overreactive. Assume mind as consciousness car. Feeling brain is driving your car, while thinking brain is giving instructions. Both brains are very bad at talking to each other. We are moved to action only by emotion. So self-control is an emotional problem. That is why efforts in bringing change doesn't work. The feeling brain generates the emotions that cause us to move into action, and the thinking brain suggests where to direct that action. If thinking brain has completely capitulated to your feeling brain, your consciousness car turns into a clown car and it will drive just meet the desires it craves for. The overindulgence or oppression of emotion leads to a crisis of hope. The person who denies his feeling brain numbs himself to the world around him. Solution is, try to have understanding between your thinking brain and feeling brain. Feeling brain is highly sensitive and completely unreasonable. Offer it something easy with an emotional benefit and the feeling brain will respond with another emotion, either positive or negative. If the emotion is positive, feeling brain will be willing to drive a little bit in that direction. If the feeling brain's response is negative, you simply acknowledge that negative emotion and offer another compromise. Then rinse and repeat. But whatever you do, do not fight the feeling brain. This type of understanding over a period of time with practice will result in better cooperation between the two. This is what's referred to in psychology as emotional regulation. Actually, self-control is an illusion that occurs when both brains are aligned and pursuing the same course of action. The only way to nail that illusion is by consistently communicating and aligning the brains around the same values. Our thinking brain knows what to do, but our feeling brain feels that we don't deserve to do, because something happened in past is related to that. This is the fundamental problem of self-control. Let's explain this with the 3 laws of emotions. First law states that, for every action, there is an equal and opposite emotional reaction. Say someone hit you, without any reason, without any justification. You have options to take like retaliation, informing police. But, there will be a rush of negative emotion, which creates a moral gap. When confronted with moral gaps, we develop overwhelming emotions toward equalization. Like, if that person apologizes for his mistake, you will feel a little satisfying and moral gap will be gone. Similarly, if someone gifts you an item of great worth, again there will a moral gap as you will experience an overwhelming feeling of wanting to equalize the joy you got. So our actions inspired by feeling brain are inclined to equalize these moral gaps as it restores hope. Second law of emotion states that our self-worth equals the sum of our emotions over time. Say a moral gap is opened up, and you are not able to equalize for long time. Then those get normalized and become our default expectation. If someone hits us and we're never able to hit him back, eventually our feeling brain will come to a startling conclusion that we deserve to be hit. Third law of emotion states that your identity will stay your identity until a new experience acts against it. Our values aren't just collections of feelings. Our values are stories. The values we pick up throughout our lives crystallize and form a sediment on top of our personality. The only way to change our values is to have experiences contrary to our values. And any attempt to break free from those values through new or contrary experiences will inevitably be met with pain and discomfort. This is why there is no such thing as change without pain and no growth without discomfort. The other way to change your values is to begin writing the narratives of your future self, to envision what life would be like if you had certain values or possessed a certain identity. There is an emotional gravity to our values. We attract those into our orbit who value the same things we do, and instinctively repel. This emotional gravity is the fundamental organization of all human conflict and endeavor. All human systems eventually reach equilibrium by clustering and conforming into constellations of mutually shared value systems. We all need communities to build hope. Religions are the basis for that communal hope. Religions bring groups of people together to mutually validate one another and make one another feel important. If you want the solution of all your problems, start a religion. Here are the 6 steps to start your own religion. Step 1. Sell hope to the hopeless. Remember that in order to feel hope, we need to feel there's a better future out there. When our life is falling apart, it signifies that our values have failed us, and we're grasping in the dark for new values to replace them. For your new religion, it's best to start preaching your message to the poor, the outcasts, the abused as starving people will believe anything if it will keep them fed. Step 2. Choose your faith. We all have faith in something. Without faith, there is no hope. Faith can be in supernatural God, money, family, and it becomes the lens through which we interpret all other values. Let this value be called as God value. Based on God value, religion can be of 3 types. 1. Spiritual religions. They draw hope from supernatural beliefs. These religions look for a better future outside this world and this life, like Christianity, Islam. They are high risk, high reward. They require the most skill and charisma to get going. 2. Ideological religions. They draw hope from the natural world. They look for salvation and growth and develop faith-based beliefs regarding this world and this life. Examples include capitalism, communism. These religions take a lot of work and effort to create, but they are fairly common. 3. Interpersonal religions. They draw hope from other people in our lives. Like romantic love, children, sports. They give us hope that another human being will bring us salvation and happiness. Step 3. Preemptively invalidate all criticism or outside questioning. Find a way to protect that faith from the inevitable criticism that will be flung its way. The trick is to adopt a belief that creates a self-reinforcing us versus them dichotomy. For example, if you don't support the war, then you support the terrorists. Step 4. Ritual sacrifice for dummies. As emotions are actions. To modify or reinforce the feeling brain's value hierarchy, you need some easily repeatable yet totally unique and identifiable action for people to perform. That's where the rituals come in. Step 5. Promise heaven, deliver hell. The beauty of a religion is that the more you promise your followers salvation, enlightenment, world peace, or whatever, the more they will fail to live up to that promise. The more they'll blame themselves and feel guilty, and the more they'll do whatever you tell them to do to make up for it. Step 6. Profit for profit. This is the last step. Use your religion to influence your followers to get money, power, or whatever you want. No more loneliness, relationship problems, or financial woes. But here's the problem: every time a religion succeeds, its values change. The religion's God value no longer comprises the principles that inspired the religion in the first place. Its God value slowly shifts and becomes the preservation of the religion itself. And this is where the corruption begins. This corruption of the religion's original values rots away at the religion's following, thus leading to the rising up of newer, reactionary religions that eventually conquer the original one. Then the whole process begins again. In this sense, success is in many ways far more precarious than failure. Each religion is a faith-based attempt to explain reality in such a way that it gives people a steady stream of hope. Every religion runs into the sticky problem of evidence. Throughout history, authorities have expended a lot of effort to hide the lack of evidence supporting their religion. So scientists decided that the most reliable faith-based beliefs were those that had the most evidence supporting them. So evidence became the God value and produced the religion, science. The scientific revolution changed the world more than anything before or since. It has improved every aspect of life. But science also introduced to the world the concept of growth. The average human from 2,000 years ago experienced about as much economic growth in his lifetime as we experience in 6 months today. With the prospect of so much growth and change in this life, people no longer relied on spiritual beliefs about the next life to give them hope. Instead, they began to invent and rely upon the ideological religions of their time. However, hope is assumed to be what saves the world. But, what if hope is not the antidote to evil and is just another form of evil? Because it was hope that inspired the communist revolutions and the Nazi genocides. Hitler hoped to exterminate the Jews to bring about an evolutionarily superior human race. Like a surgeon's scalpel, hope can save as well as take a life. The sources of hope that give our lives a sense of meaning are the same sources of division and hate. Hope is, therefore, destructive. So we must look beyond hope. As per Friedrich Nietzsche's formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, meant the unconditional acceptance of all life and experience. The highs and the lows, the meaning and the meaninglessness. It basically meant, hope for nothing. Because hope is ultimately empty. Anything your mind can conceptualize is fundamentally flawed and limited and therefore damaging if worshipped unconditionally. We must let the feeling brain feel, but deny it the stories of meaning and value that it so desperately craves. Here starts the second part of the book, Everything is Fucked. It will help us understand life without hope. Let's have a difference between a child, an adolescent, and an adult. For child, actions are driven only by pleasure. In adolescence, they are aware of the values and principles, but their actions are governed by pleasure. Like an adolescent will say that she values honesty only because she has learned that saying so produces good results. But when confronted with difficult conversations, she will tell white lies. While adulthood is the realization that sometimes an abstract principle is right and good for its own sake, that even if it hurts you today, being honest is still the right thing to do. So question comes, why we don't grow? Good early parenting depends upon implementing the correct consequences for a child's pleasure-pain-driven behavior. Parents who fail to do this fail their children because it won't take long for the child to have the shocking realization that the world does not cater to his whims. Learning this as an adult is incredibly painful. Another way of failure is, they abuse them. An abused child also does not develop beyond his pain and pleasure-driven values. Such child never learns to control his own behavior and develops coping mechanisms to deal with the incessant pain. So when they become adults, they remain stuck in their childhood value system. For similar reasons, people doesn't reach adulthood from adolescent. Trusting in the learnings of past is what allows the child to develop rules and principles around them. This is the same thing that the world's great religions try to make us learn. Famous Immanuel Kant argued that the most fundamental moral duty is the preservation and growth of consciousness, both in ourselves and in others. He called this as the formula of humanity. This is the single principle that pulls people out of adolescent and into adult virtue. You must respect someone without expecting anything in return, otherwise you don't truly respect him. Modern democracy was invented under the assumption that the average person is selfish. That the only way to protect us from ourselves is to create systems that no one person or group can completely hose the rest of the population. But the maturity of our culture is deteriorating. There is a paradox of progress that states, the better things get, the more we perceive threats where there are none, and the more upset we become. In an experiment to see what if there were no crime. It showed that the more comfortable and ethical a society became, the more that small indiscretions would become magnified in our minds. If everyone stopped killing each other, we wouldn't necessarily feel good about it. We'd just get equally upset about the more minor stuff. On a scale of 0 to 10 to check happiness, our lives remain on an average around 7. In case of some good or bad chapters of life, it fluctuates and then again settle at 7, and we live much of our lives this way, constantly chasing our imagined 10. In the old days, life was hard. Famines and plagues and floods were constant. Slavery, killing were other issues. With development of science and technology, it was assumed that to increase happiness, we need to reduce pain. But pain is the universal constant of life. The attempt to move away from pain can only backfire. When we avoid pain, stress, and chaos, we become fragile. Need of hour is to become antifragile, which means gaining from stresses and external pressures. Meditation, at its core, is a practice of antifragility. The Buddha said that suffering is like being shot by 2 arrows. The physical pain and the mental pain associated with it. Through the practice of meditation, the Buddha said that if we could train ourselves to be struck only by the first arrow, we could essentially render ourselves invincible to any mental or emotional pain. While pain is inevitable, suffering is always a choice. Similarly, death is psychologically necessary because it creates stakes in life. You don't know what something is worth until you experience the potential to lose it. The pursuit of happiness is, then, an avoidance of growth. When we pursue pain, we are able to choose what pain we bring into our lives. And this choice makes the pain meaningful and thus makes life feel meaningful. The pursuit of happiness leads us toward childishness, an incessant and intolerant desire for something more, a hole that can never be filled. The world runs on feelings. This is because people spend money on things that make them feel good. This is the reason behind the success of marketing industry. The more you're able to influence the emotions of people in the world, the more money and power you'll accumulate. There are two ways to create value in the marketplace. 1. Innovations. The first way is to replace one pain with a much more tolerable, desirable pain. Like development of vaccines reduced lifetime pain from diseases to few seconds of needle prick. 2. Diversions. The second way is to help people numb their pain like a weekend beach trip. Once an economy switches over to diversions, the culture begins to shift and a psychological fragility is introduced. Another development is Internet. The Internet was not designed to give us what we need. Instead, it gives people what they want. Technology gives people what they want faster and more efficiently than ever before. But everything still seems disturbed. This means the problem is in our demands. Because feeling brain is in charge of what we want. People feel getting their demands supplied by the technology as freedom. But this is a fake freedom because what most of us want are diversions. This is making us fragile and we become prone to a series of low-level addictive behaviors like compulsively checking our phone, our email. Also, they are developing our inability to identify, tolerate. This freedom is also leading us to paradox of choices. The only true form of freedom is through self-limitation. It is not the privilege of choosing everything you want in your life, but rather, choosing what you will give up in your life. Diversions come and go. Pleasure never lasts. But you will always be able to choose what you are willing to sacrifice. This sort of self-denial is paradoxically the only thing that expands real freedom in life. Fake freedom puts us on the treadmill toward chasing more, whereas real freedom is the conscious decision to live with less. This situation of fake freedom was predicted by Plato. He was the first to argue that one must build character through various forms of self-denial, rather than through self-indulgence. He claimed that democracy was not the most desirable form of government because, as we know, when people left to their own, they try to run away from pain and toward happiness. And they never feel entirely safe or satisfied. Eventually, the institutions won't be able to keep up with the desires of the people. And when the institutions fail, people start blaming the institutions themselves. Democracy requires a citizenry of strong maturity and character. Next comes the final religion, that is the artificial intelligence. We should be aware that artificial intelligence is coming and will become better than we are at pretty much everything. It will reach a point where its intelligence outstrips ours by so much that we will no longer comprehend what it's doing. Then, we will end up right back where we began, worshipping AI gods instead of the primitive gods. So, before we reach to that stage, our job should be to create tools that promote greater character and maturity in our cultures rather than diverting us from growth. To create tools to help our thinking brain better communicate and manage the feeling brain. So, instead of looking for hope, try this: don't hope. Don't despair, either. Don't hope for better. Just be better. Be more compassionate, more resilient, more humble, more disciplined. Here we shall wind up the video. We hope you like it. We'll see you soon with another video. Till then, be happy.